Hey, this is EksAyn Anderson here for the Principal Podcast. Today I'm going to talk about something that I think is really important, and that most things, seems like a lot of things in my life have led up to kind of two contradictory ideas. First idea is that this life is so important and should be cherished. And the second idea is that this life really isn't it. And I think they're both true. This life is very important. The choices we make in this life are super important, but it's also not it. Let me tell you what I mean by this. Let me share a couple thoughts. And I want to read something from the New Testament. Just so you know, I think if you want to learn about principles, one of the best ways you can learn about principles is to study Jesus Christ and his life. I don't know if I should I don't know what, for lack of a better word, Jesus Christ, I think, is the principle giver. I want to just tell you this story and talk about it for a little bit. So Jesus Christ in the Bible, the story goes something like this. He's about to be crucified, and he's standing in front of Pilate. And Pilate, just so you know, may be wondering a little bit about who is this guy who a lot of people admire him, but some people want him to die. And he starts asking him some questions, I think. And he asked him a question. Jesus responds to this one question. He says, "My kingdom is not of this world." He says, "If my kingdom were of this world," but he said, "then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered unto thee? But now my kingdom's not from hence." He said, this isn't it. Now, I want you to think about that thought where Jesus, he's about to be crucified, and he tells Pilate, "My kingdom is not of this world." Hold that thought for a second. I went and looked up on Investopedia, and on Investopedia, it's talking about the Fear and Greed Index. And it says this: the Fear and Greed Index was developed by CNN Money to measure on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis the primary emotions that influence how much investors are willing to pay for stocks. Did you hear that? The primary emotions, according to Investopedia, and it was developed by CNN Money, which, CNN has a lot of good reporting, says that fear and greed index are the two primary emotions that influence how much investors are willing to pay. Now, I want you to keep that thought, and I want you to listen to a thought from somebody who I really respect, a great Christian, C.S. Lewis, who's passed away. He said something like this: hell is something like the bureaucracy of a police state. I'm skipping down. An official society held together entirely by fear and greed. Dog eat dog is the principle of the whole organization. Everyone wishes everyone else is discredited, demotion, and ruin. Everyone is an expert in the confidential report, the pretended alliance, the stab in the back. He's talking about what hell would be like, but he's saying it's run entirely by fear and greed. And then I thought the fact that he mentioned fear and greed, here's a brilliant Christian who used to be a professor at Oxford in England, which Oxford is a very prestigious school. He was a Christian at a time when being a Christian was not popular. And he said that the whole, hell, his symbol, hell is something like a bureaucracy, an official society held together entirely by fear and greed. And then we read on Investopedia that fear and greed was developed by CNN Money to develop on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis the two of the primary emotions that influence how much investors are willing to pay for stocks. So, being an investor in today's world, man, it could be a good thing. You could make a lot of money. But is it interesting that fear and greed are the two emotions both mentioned by C.S. Lewis as being something that holds hell together? And fear and greed are the two emotions that are what govern what investors are willing to pay for stocks. I'm fearful I might lose money, or I'm greedy, I want to make more money. Isn't that interesting? And then we have Jesus, who's standing in front of Pilate. And Pilate's questioning him. And Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." Now, I realize that some of you may be thinking, I don't believe in Jesus Christ anyway. And that's your right. You don't need to. So I want you to think about this. For some of you who may not believe in Jesus Christ, I want you to just think about this quote. And it's from C.S. Lewis, somebody who I respect, said, Christianity, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. That was from C.S. Lewis's book, The God in the Dock. I believe it was on around page 101. I want to make one more quote. And I think this is important. C.S. Lewis was such a brilliant man. He used to be an atheist, and then he reluctantly became a full-born Christian because of some experiences that he had. And he said this: "I'm trying here to prevent anyone from saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him," meaning Jesus Christ. "I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He'd either be a lunatic on a level with the man who says he's a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to." So I guess what I'd like you to examine is, when we look at the world we live in, is it possible that we're climbing up a ladder that's turned the wrong way? If this world really isn't it, and Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." Last quote, it's a quote from C.S. Lewis. I think this is really important. He said, "Enemy occupied territory. That is what this world is. Christianity is the story of how the rightful king has landed. You might say landed in disguise, and is calling us to take part in a great campaign of sabotage." End quote. Now, I want to make sure, when I say enemy occupied territory, I want to make sure to remember that the enemy is not other people. All people are created by God, and we should not see anyone as enemies. If they're acting as enemies, or we perceive them as enemies, we're under obligation from Jesus himself, the rightful king himself, to pray for them and do our best to love them. So please know. But if you consider that maybe, if that is true, why do we try to climb the ladder in this enemy occupied territory? Why are so many people concerned about climbing the ladder to success so they can get a higher rung, if it really is getting them a rung in enemy occupied territory? Is that what we really want? If you look at Christ, if this is true, that Christ is the rightful king, look at how Christ shows up in the world. Christ shows up in the world, and he is born in a stable. He's a lowly carpenter. He's a man of no reputation. And he's showing us what the real world is like. So this world is important. The choices we make are important. People are important. It's important to love people. But consider maybe that this world is not it. And Jesus Christ, right when he could have stopped and not been crucified, he told Pilate, who had the decision-making ability to have him crucified or not, he looked at him, he just said, "My kingdom is not of this world." It's important, the choices we make in this world, but my kingdom is not of this world. Now, I want to let you know, I'm not saying anything bad about people who are investing or people who are doing well in the world and have climbed to a certain ladder. I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm just asking you to consider for yourself, is this world all there is? And do my decisions act as if this world is all there is? So for example, you hear about people who commit suicide because they've lost their life savings. underlying that seems that it might be likely that they had an idea that this world is all they're at. Here they invested all of their time and money trying to make money in this world. And then when it goes, a stock market move or something happens that makes it go down, they decide to end their life. To me, it seems likely that they might have a belief that this world is all there is. And I would say, I don't think that's true. And just think about that. Think about that. Thank you for joining the Principal Podcast today. This is EksAyn Anderson. Hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. So glad you joined. I am on a mission to help as many marriages and families and parents learn the principles and techniques that are going to help their marriages be better. And one thing I know about you, there are so many of you listening right now that have tips, that have techniques, that if you would just share them with the community, it could help. So please share them with the rest of us, share them with me. Would love to hear them. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review. Let's do everything we can to help as many marriages as possible. I'm a huge believer that a wise man, Neil A. Maxwell, said, if we don't fix marriages and families, everything else we do will be like straightening deck chairs on the Titanic. I'm sure I didn't quote that right, but it was something to that effect. Let's go to the root of the problem and help marriages and families. Feel free to follow me on social media. Most importantly, learn to follow Jesus Christ, who is the principal giver. And let's share as much as we can with each other to make this a great community where we can help people. Thanks again for joining.